An astronaut stranded on a frozen alien world stumbles upon a mysterious girl whose skin glows with shimmering crystals. She holds the power to heal entire ecosystems, but her existence becomes a target for humanity's greed. As their bond deepens, they must face impossible choices between love and survival. Will he protect her from those who seek to exploit her? Or will she become another casualty of mankind's endless hunger? Stay until the end to find out, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling HFY stories. The research vessel, Elysium, descended onto Cryos, its engines roaring against the biting cold that enveloped the planet like a shroud. Captain Luke Everett adjusted his helmet visor, scanning the desolate expanse before him. Ice stretched endlessly, broken only by jagged spires jutting toward the heavens. It was beautiful, yet terrifying, a place where life seemed impossible. His mission was clear: assess the potential resources hidden beneath the frozen surface. But something about this barren wasteland unsettled him. A feeling gnawed at the edges of his mind, whispering warnings he couldn't ignore. As the team began setting up equipment, Luke wandered slightly ahead, drawn inexplicably toward a cluster of peculiar ice formations. They pulsed faintly, almost imperceptibly, casting soft hues across the ground. He reached out cautiously, brushing his gloved hand against one. Suddenly, a low hum resonated through the air, sending vibrations rippling down his spine. That's when he saw her, or rather, sensed her presence. Emerging from behind a shard-like wall came a figure unlike anything he'd ever encountered. Her skin was translucent, veins of shimmering crystal coursing visibly within her body. Her eyes met his, wide and unblinking, filled with both curiosity and caution. Luke froze, unsure whether to retreat or approach further. What are you?" he asked, his voice trembling despite himself. She tilted her head, studying him intently before responding in halting but melodic tones. "I am Miriam," she said simply. "This is my home." Miriam stood there, her form glowing faintly in the dim light of the planet's twin suns, which barely pierced the thick atmosphere. The crystals embedded in her skin refracted the light into prismatic patterns, making her appear as though she were part of the very fabric of this alien world. Luke felt a strange pull towards her, an instinctual urge to understand who, or what, she was. Was she some kind of native life form, an anomaly born from the planet itself? Or perhaps something entirely beyond human comprehension? He took a hesitant step closer, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I mean no harm," he said softly, hoping his tone conveyed sincerity. Miriam didn't move, her gaze steady and unwavering. There was something ancient in her expression, a depth that suggested centuries of solitude and wisdom far surpassing his own. "What are you doing here?" she finally asked, her voice carrying a musical quality that resonated deep within Luke's chest. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We're explorers," he replied, "looking for ways to help our people back on Earth." Her brow furrowed slightly, as if the concept of helping others was foreign to her. "Help," she echoed, tilting her head again. "You take too much already." Luke frowned, taken aback by her statement. "Take?" "We haven't taken anything yet." Miriam gestured vaguely around them, encompassing the vast, icy landscape. "Your kind always does," she murmured cryptically. Then, without another word, she turned and began walking away, her movements fluid and graceful, leaving behind faint traces of luminescence in the snow. For a moment, Luke debated letting her go. After all, she had given him no reason to trust her intentions. Yet something compelled him to follow. Perhaps it was the mystery surrounding her, or maybe it was the undeniable sense that she held answers to questions he hadn't even thought to ask. Whatever the case, he found himself trailing after her, careful not to make sudden movements that might startle her. She led him deeper into the labyrinthine ice formations, their towering structures casting eerie shadows in the dim light. The air grew colder still, each breath visible as a cloud of vapor before dissipating into nothingness. Despite the harsh conditions, Luke couldn't shake the feeling that they were entering sacred ground, a place untouched by time or corruption. Finally, Miriam stopped in front of a massive crystalline structure that rose high above the surrounding spires. Its surface shimmered with an inner light, pulsating rhythmically like a heartbeat. She placed a hand on its surface, closing her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, she looked at Luke with renewed intensity. "This is why I stay," she whispered. "To protect this." Before he could respond, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, causing Luke to stumble. Miriam remained perfectly still, her connection to the land seemingly unbroken. As quickly as it began, the tremor subsided, leaving behind an unsettling silence. When Luke regained his footing, he realized Miriam was watching him expectantly, as if waiting for him to say something profound. Instead, all he managed was a quiet, "Thank you for showing me this." Her lips curved upward ever so slightly, the closest thing to a smile he'd seen from her thus far. Without another word, she turned and disappeared into the icy wilderness, leaving Luke alone with his thoughts and more questions than answers. Miriam moved gracefully, each step leaving faint imprints in the snow. She gestured for Luke to follow her deeper into the labyrinth of ice spires. Reluctantly, he complied, his heart pounding as he trailed behind her. Questions swirled in his mind. Was she human? Alien? Some kind of anomaly born from the planet itself? Yet there was no denying the intelligence in her gaze, nor the strange warmth emanating from her presence amidst the frigid surroundings. She led him to a secluded alcove where bioluminescent plants thrived, defying the hostile conditions outside. Their glow illuminated Miriam's features, making her appear otherworldly. "These are mine," she explained, touching one gently. To Luke's astonishment, the plant responded, blooming fully under her touch. "I can heal them," she continued. "Everything here, everything dying, I fix." Her words struck a chord within him. Could she truly possess such abilities? If so, what implications did that have, not just for Cryos, but for Earth? For now, however, all he could focus on was the sheer wonder of her existence. There was something profoundly intimate about being alone with her in this alien sanctuary, far removed from the sterile confines of his ship. "Why are you here?" Miriam asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Luke hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "We're explorers," he replied carefully, "looking for resources to help our people." Her expression darkened slightly, though she said nothing. Instead, she turned away, leading him back toward the surface. Back at the base camp, tensions ran high among the crew. Supplies were dwindling faster than anticipated, and morale plummeted as equipment malfunctioned due to the extreme temperatures. When Luke returned late that evening, carrying tales of a mysterious girl made of light and crystal, most dismissed his account as delusional ramblings brought on by isolation. Except Dr. Elena Vasquez, the team's biologist, who listened intently, her sharp eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "You believe her powers are real?" Elena questioned later, after everyone else had retired to their quarters. Luke nodded, recounting every detail of his encounter with Miriam. Elena leaned forward, intrigued. "If true, this changes everything. Imagine the applications: restoring ecosystems ravaged by climate change, reversing ecological collapse. But at what cost?" Luke interrupted sharply. "She's not some experiment to be dissected. She's alive." Elena sighed, acknowledging his point, but unwilling to abandon the possibilities. "Regardless, we need proof. Something tangible. Bring her back tomorrow. Let us observe her firsthand." Luke agreed reluctantly, knowing Miriam might not trust them. But as he lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling of his cramped sleeping pod, he couldn't shake the image of her luminous form etched into his memory. The next morning, Luke ventured back to the ice spires, half expecting Miriam to vanish without a trace. To his relief, she awaited him patiently, seated cross-legged beside a pool of liquid crystal water. Without hesitation, she rose to greet him, her demeanor calm yet guarded. "They want to meet you," Luke admitted, gesturing vaguely toward the direction of the base camp. Miriam frowned, her delicate brows furrowing. "Why?" "To understand you. To learn." Her response was immediate and firm.
No.
Not safe. Luke understood her reluctance. Trusting strangers, even well-meaning ones, was rarely wise. Still, he pressed gently. Please. Just once. Let them see what you can do. Prove to them that you're not a threat. After a long pause, Miriam finally relented, nodding slowly. Together, they walked back to the camp, her steps hesitant but resolute. When they arrived, the crew gathered around, awestruck by her ethereal beauty. Elena stepped forward cautiously, holding out a wilted sample plant retrieved from Earth. "Can you?" she began, trailing off nervously. Miriam took the plant gently, closing her eyes as she focused. Within moments, it sprang back to life, vibrant green leaves unfurling before their very eyes. Gasps erupted throughout the group, followed by murmurs of disbelief and excitement. Word of Miriam's abilities spread quickly via encrypted transmissions sent back to Earth. While the initial reactions were celebratory, darker intentions soon surfaced. Military officials expressed interest in harnessing her crystalline essence for advanced weaponry, seeing untapped potential in her unique biology. Orders trickled down to the Elysium crew, secure samples of her tissue for analysis. Luke overheard snippets of these discussions during routine debriefings, his stomach churning with dread. How could they even consider exploiting her? She wasn't a resource to be mined. She was a person, fragile yet powerful in ways they barely comprehended. Determined to shield her, he resolved to keep her presence a secret from the higher-ups. Meanwhile, Miriam grew increasingly withdrawn, sensing the shift in atmosphere. One evening, as they sat together overlooking the icy plains, she spoke softly. "They fear me." "No," Luke countered firmly. "Some do. Others don't understand." "And you?" she probed, turning to face him. "I care about you," he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "More than I should." For the first time, a hint of a smile graced her lips.
Good.
Desperate to buy time, Luke devised a plan. Under the guise of conducting field tests, he escorted Miriam far beyond the reach of the base camp, venturing into uncharted territories. Here, surrounded by towering glaciers and glittering auroras, they found temporary solace. One night, nestled inside a natural ice cave, Miriam confided in him. "My kind once thrived here," she whispered, tracing patterns on the frosty walls. "Until the storms came. Only I remain." Luke listened silently, his chest tightening with sorrow. How many centuries had she endured alone, bearing the weight of her responsibilities? And now, faced with humanity's insatiable greed, her fate hung precariously in the balance. "I won't let them hurt you," he vowed fiercely. Her gaze lingered on him, searching for truth in his promise. Finally, she nodded, leaning into his embrace. For the first time, Luke allowed himself to hope for a future where they could coexist peacefully, free from fear. Yet even as their bond deepened, the specter of Earth's ambitions loomed larger than ever. Back at the base, preparations for extraction continued covertly. Specialized tools designed to extract biological material arrived unexpectedly, disguised as routine maintenance supplies. Luke intercepted one of the crates, his blood boiling as he realized the truth. Confronting Dr. Vasquez, he demanded answers. "We have orders, Luke," Elena replied tersely. "Orders we can't ignore." "At what cost?" he shot back. "You'll destroy her." Elena softened slightly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I wish it were different.
Believe me, Ido.
But this isn't about us. It's about survival." Survival. The word echoed hollowly in Luke's ears. What kind of future awaited humanity if they sacrificed morality for progress? He knew then that he couldn't stand idly by while those in power exploited Miriam for their own gain. That evening, as the crew settled into their quarters, Luke slipped away unnoticed, heading back to the ice spires where Miriam awaited him. She sensed his urgency immediately, rising to meet him as he approached. Without needing to explain, she followed him deeper into the wilderness, trusting him implicitly despite the danger. They traveled for hours, putting as much distance between themselves and the base as possible. Along the way, Miriam shared fragments of her past, how her people had once lived in harmony with Cryos, nurturing its ecosystems and maintaining its delicate balance. But when the storms came, both literal and metaphorical, their numbers dwindled until only she remained. "It's not just my life I'm protecting," she admitted quietly. "It's theirs too. Their memories. Their legacy." Luke felt a lump rise in his throat. The weight of her burden was almost unbearable to comprehend. Yet through it all, she carried herself with grace and resilience, embodying the very essence of hope in the face of despair. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the icy landscape in hues of pink and gold, Luke made a silent vow. No matter what happened next, he would fight for her, to protect her, to honor her sacrifices, and to ensure that her story didn't end here. But even as he resolved to stand by her side, he couldn't shake the feeling that darker forces were closing in, ready to tear them apart. Word of Miriam's existence spread like wildfire across Earth's networks, igniting debates among scientists, politicians, and military strategists alike. To some, she represented an unparalleled opportunity, a chance to unlock secrets that could revolutionize technology, medicine, and warfare. To others, she was a symbol of humanity's hubris, a reminder of how often progress came at the expense of ethics. For Luke, however, these discussions felt distant and abstract compared to the reality of standing beside Miriam each day. Together, they explored hidden corners of Cryos, discovering remnants of her people's civilization buried beneath layers of ice and snow. Ancient sculptures carved from crystal depicted scenes of unity and prosperity, offering glimpses into a world long lost to time. "These were our stories," Miriam explained, running her fingers over the intricate carvings. "Our dreams." Luke marveled at the craftsmanship, noting how the crystals seemed to pulse faintly under her touch. It was as though they recognized her, responding to her presence with a quiet reverence. "They're beautiful," he murmured. "Like you." Miriam glanced at him, her expression softening. "You see beauty in everything," she said with a trace of wonder. "Even here." "Especially here," Luke corrected gently. "Because of you." Their connection grew stronger with each passing day, transcending language and culture. Though their worlds were vastly different, they found common ground in their shared desire to preserve life and foster understanding. Yet even as their bond flourished, the threat of discovery loomed ever closer. Back at the base, tensions escalated. The arrival of reinforcements signaled a shift in strategy, from observation to action. Armed personnel began patrolling the perimeter, their movements methodical and calculated. Rumors circulated among the crew about impending raids, sparking unease among those who sympathized with Miriam's plight. Dr. Vasquez, torn between loyalty to her mission and compassion for Miriam, sought out Luke during one of his rare visits to the base. "They're planning something big," she warned him urgently. "You need to get her out of here." Luke clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "And go where?" "There's nowhere safe, not anymore." Elena hesitated, then reached into her pocket, pulling out a small dated chip. "Take this," she urged. "It contains coordinates for an abandoned research outpost on the far side of the planet. It's isolated, but it might give you enough time to figure out your next move." Gratitude swelled within Luke, tempered by the knowledge that accepting her help meant placing her in jeopardy. Still, he nodded curtly, slipping the chip into his suit. "Thank you," he said simply. As he returned to Miriam, he wrestled with the enormity of the decision ahead. Could they truly outrun humanity's reach? Or would fleeing only delay the inevitable? Under cover of darkness, Luke and Miriam set out for the coordinates provided by Elena. The journey was grueling, testing both their endurance and resolve. Temperatures plummeted as they ascended higher into the planet's frozen peaks, forcing them to rely on improvised shelters carved from compacted snow. Despite the hardships, moments of levity punctuated their trek. Miriam taught Luke how to identify edible lichens growing in sheltered crevices, laughing softly at his initial hesitation. In turn, he regaled her with tales of Earth's diverse landscapes, describing lush rainforests, sprawling deserts, and bustling cities teeming with life. "You miss it," she observed one evening as they huddled together for warmth. "Sometimes," Luke admitted, "but not enough to leave you behind." Her smile was fleeting but genuine, lighting up her crystalline features like starlight. "You're brave," she said softly. "Braver than anyone I've ever known." The compliment caught him off guard, stirring emotions he hadn't fully acknowledged until now. Brave? Perhaps. But bravery alone wouldn't be enough to shield them from the storm brewing on the horizon. After days of relentless travel, they finally reached the abandoned outpost, a dilapidated structure perched precariously on the edge of a cliff. Inside, remnants of past experiments littered the space, rusted equipment, faded notes scrawled on crumbling paper, and shelves lined with empty specimen jars. "This will work," Luke declared, surveying the area with cautious optimism. "At least temporarily." Miriam nodded, though her expression remained guarded. "We can't hide forever," she reminded him. "No," Luke agreed grimly. "But maybe we don't have to." Using materials salvaged from the outpost, he began constructing rudimentary defenses, fortifying the entrance and setting traps along likely approach routes. Meanwhile, Miriam focused on revitalizing the surrounding environment, coaxing dormant plant life back into existence. Slowly but surely, the barren landscape transformed, becoming a sanctuary amidst the chaos. Yet even as they worked tirelessly to secure their refuge, Luke couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Sooner or later, their pursuers would find them, and when they did, they'd stop at nothing to claim what they believed belonged to them. The days turned into weeks at the abandoned outpost, and while Luke and Miriam had managed to carve out a semblance of safety, the looming threat never truly dissipated. Every sound outside, the crunch of snow underfoot, the distant hum of machinery, sent shivers down Luke's spine. He knew they were running on borrowed time. Earth's forces were relentless, driven by greed and ambition that seemed insurmountable. Miriam, too, felt the weight of their predicament but handled it with quiet resilience. Her presence was a balm to Luke's fraying nerves. Her calm demeanor and unwavering optimism acted as a counterbalance to his growing anxiety. She spent her days nurturing the fragile ecosystem around them, coaxing life from the frozen ground in ways that defied logic. Plants bloomed where none should have survived, their vibrant colors standing in stark contrast to the icy desolation beyond. Birds returned, drawn inexplicably to the sanctuary she had created. One evening, as they sat together watching the twin suns dip below the horizon, Luke finally voiced what had been weighing heavily on his mind. "What happens if we can't stop them?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Miriam turned to him, her crystalline eyes reflecting the fading light. "Then we fight," she said simply. "Not just for ourselves, but for everything this planet represents." Her words carried a depth of conviction that left Luke momentarily speechless. Here was someone who had already endured unimaginable loss yet continued to fight, not out of anger or vengeance, but because she believed in something greater than herself. It was humbling, inspiring even, to witness such strength firsthand. "But how?" he pressed, frustration creeping into his tone. "We're outnumbered, outgunned. What chance do we really have?" Miriam placed a hand over his, her touch surprisingly warm despite the biting cold. "Strength isn't always measured in numbers or weapons," she reminded him. "Sometimes it's about heart, about belief." Luke wanted to believe her, desperately so. But doubt gnawed at him, whispering insidious thoughts of failure and futility. Still, he nodded, drawing strength from her unwavering resolve. If nothing else, he owed it to her to try, to stand by her side no matter the odds. As night fell, they retreated inside the outpost, barricading themselves against the encroaching darkness. Luke took first watch, pacing restlessly as he kept an ear tuned to the silence outside. Hours passed without incident, lulling him into a false sense of security. That was when the attack came. A deafening roar shattered the stillness, followed by the unmistakable whir of drones slicing through the air. Luke sprang into action, waking Miriam and ushering her toward the hidden escape tunnel they'd prepared as a last resort. They found us, he muttered grimly, gripping her hand tightly. Miriam didn't hesitate, trusting him implicitly as they navigated the narrow passage. Behind them, explosions rocked the outpost, collapsing parts of the structure and sealing off their pursuers for now. When they emerged into the open air, gasping for breath, Luke realized they were once again adrift in the wilderness, with no clear destination ahead. But one thing was certain: surrender was not an option. Their flight from the outpost marked the beginning of a perilous game of cat and mouse. Pursued relentlessly by drones and ground units equipped with advanced tracking technology, Luke and Miriam relied on cunning and sheer willpower to stay one step ahead. They moved under cover of darkness, using natural formations to mask their movements and leaving behind false trails to mislead their hunters. Miriam proved invaluable during these harrowing escapes. Her intimate knowledge of Cryo's terrain allowed them to navigate treacherous paths inaccessible to their pursuers. More than once, she led them through labyrinthine ice caves or across precarious glaciers, her confidence inspiring Luke to push past his limits. Yet the strain of constant evasion began to take its toll. Exhaustion etched lines into Luke's face, and his hands trembled with fatigue. Miriam, though seemingly tireless, bore her own burdens silently. The destruction wrought by humanity's pursuit weighed heavily on her spirit, manifesting in moments of quiet despair when she thought Luke wasn't looking. One particularly grueling night, after narrowly evading capture yet again, they collapsed in a shallow hollow sheltered by jagged ice spires. Luke leaned back against the icy wall, closing his eyes briefly as he tried to steady his breathing. "We can't keep doing this," he admitted hoarsely. "Sooner or later, they'll catch us." Miriam knelt beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "There's another way," she said softly. "What are you talking about?" Luke asked, opening his eyes to meet her gaze. "My people, they left behind more than memories," she explained hesitantly. "They built defenses, mechanisms designed to protect this world from harm. But activating them requires energy I haven't been strong enough to channel alone." Realization dawned on Luke. "You want me to help you?" She nodded, her expression earnest. "Together, maybe we can awaken them. Maybe we can turn the tide." Though the idea filled him with equal parts hope and dread, Luke agreed without hesitation. If there was even a chance to end this nightmare, he would seize it. Guided by Miriam's instincts, they journeyed deeper into Cryo's heartland, seeking the ancient mechanisms she spoke of. Along the way, they encountered remnants of her people's civilization, ruins half buried beneath centuries of ice. Artifacts imbued with residual energy that pulsed faintly under her touch. Each discovery fueled her determination, reigniting embers of hope within her soul. Finally, after days of arduous travel, they reached their destination, a colossal crystalline monolith embedded in the side of a glacier. Its surface shimmered with an inner light, casting prismatic patterns across the surrounding landscape. Miriam approached reverently, her steps deliberate and measured. "This is it," she whispered, awe evident in her voice. "The heart of Cryos." Luke stared up at the towering structure, overwhelmed by its majesty. "How does it work?" he asked cautiously. "It responds to intent," Miriam replied. "To unity, to purpose." Taking a deep breath, she extended her hand toward him. "Are you ready?" Luke hesitated only for a moment before clasping her hand firmly. Together, they stepped closer to the monolith, their combined resolve radiating outward like ripples in water. As they touched the crystalline surface simultaneously, a surge of energy coursed through them, connecting their consciousnesses in a way neither could have anticipated. Images flooded their minds, visions of Cryo's past glory, of ecosystems thriving in harmony, of civilizations working together to preserve their world. And then, abruptly, the images shifted, showing glimpses of Earth, its cities choked with smog, its forests reduced to ashes, its oceans teeming with plastic waste. The message was clear: humanity's actions had consequences far beyond its own borders. If left unchecked, their greed would consume not only Earth, but countless other worlds as well. When the vision faded, Luke and Miriam found themselves standing amidst a transformed landscape. The monolith glowed brighter than ever, sending waves of energy rippling outward. Snow melted, revealing lush vegetation beneath. Wildlife emerged from hiding, reclaiming territory long abandoned. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, there was hope. News of the sudden ecological resurgence spread quickly, thanks to surveillance satellites monitoring Cryo's surface. Scientists back on Earth scrambled to analyze the data, baffled by the unprecedented phenomenon. Meanwhile, military officials grew increasingly desperate, recognizing that their window of opportunity was closing rapidly. Orders were issued to intensify efforts to capture Miriam, regardless of collateral damage. Entire battalions descended upon Cryos, armed with cutting-edge weaponry and determined to claim victory at any cost. Luke and Miriam watched from a distance as ships descended onto the newly revitalized landscape, their landing thrusters scorching the pristine terrain. Anger burned within Luke, tempered only by the knowledge that violence wouldn't solve anything. Instead, they opted for diplomacy, or at least an attempt at it. Using the communication array salvaged from the abandoned outpost, Luke broadcast a message directly to Earth, exposing the unethical plans devised by military leaders. He included footage of Miriam healing damaged ecosystems, appealing to humanity's better nature. To those watching, he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside him. This is not just a resource to be exploited. This is life, a testament to balance and coexistence. We've already destroyed so much. Do we really want to repeat our mistakes here? The response was mixed. Public outrage erupted globally, forcing authorities to reconsider their stance. Protests erupted in major cities, demanding accountability and transparency. Meanwhile, private factions doubled down, viewing Miriam as a prize worth any price. Caught between opposing forces, Luke and Miriam braced themselves for the inevitable showdown. As reinforcements poured onto Cryos, tensions reached a boiling point. Armed personnel surrounded the area near the heart of Cryos, their weapons trained on Luke and Miriam. Cornered and outnumbered, Luke stood defiantly between them and her. "She's not your property," he shouted, raising his hands in protest. "Stand down, Captain," ordered Lieutenant Harris, his tone icy. "You're jeopardizing the mission." "The mission?" Luke spat bitterly. "What mission?" "Exploiting innocent lives for profit." Before tensions escalated further, Miriam intervened, stepping forward calmly. "Enough," she declared, her voice resonating with unexpected authority. The crystals embedded in her skin flared brightly, bathing the area in radiant light. The soldiers hesitated, momentarily blinded. Seizing the opportunity, Luke grabbed Miriam's hand and fled, weaving through the maze-like terrain until they reached safety. The narrow escape left Luke and Miriam physically and emotionally drained, but they knew there was no time to rest. The soldiers would regroup, their determination fueled by desperation and orders from above. For now, however, the brilliant display of energy emanating from Miriam had bought them precious time, a fleeting reprieve in an otherwise relentless pursuit. They retreated to a secluded valley nestled between towering ice formations, its entrance obscured by thick curtains of falling snow. It wasn't impenetrable, but it offered a temporary sanctuary where they could catch their breath and strategize. As they huddled together beneath a makeshift shelter crafted from salvaged materials, Luke couldn't help but marvel at the resilience radiating from Miriam. Despite everything she had endured, the loss of her people, the destruction of her home, the constant threat looming over her, she remained steadfast, her spirit unbroken. "You're incredible," he murmured, brushing a strand of frost-laden hair from her face. Miriam smiled faintly, though sadness lingered in her crystalline eyes. "I'm just trying to survive," she replied softly. "Like everyone else." Luke shook his head, unwilling to let her minimize her strength.
No.
"You're fighting for something bigger than yourself. Bigger than survival. And that's rare." Her gaze softened, and for a moment, the weight of their situation seemed to lift. But reality soon intruded, as it always did. The distant hum of engines grew louder, signaling the approach of their pursuers. "They're coming," Miriam said simply, rising to her feet with quiet resolve. Luke joined her, scanning the horizon anxiously. "We can't outrun them forever." "Then we don't run," she countered firmly. "We stand our ground." Though her words filled him with pride, they also ignited a spark of fear. Standing their ground meant confronting forces far greater than themselves, forces equipped with advanced technology and unwavering determination. Yet as he looked into Miriam's luminous eyes, he realized there was no other choice. They had come too far to back down now. With renewed purpose, they set about fortifying their position. Using shards of ice and fragments of rock, they constructed barriers to slow their enemies' advance. Miriam channeled her energy into revitalizing the surrounding environment, coaxing plant life to grow rapidly and create natural obstacles. Together, they transformed the valley into a fortress of sorts, albeit one built on hope rather than concrete defenses. When the first wave of soldiers arrived, they were met with resistance unlike anything they had anticipated. The plants Miriam had nurtured responded to her presence, tangling around boots and ensnaring equipment. Crystalline structures embedded in the terrain pulsed with light, disorienting those who dared approach. Even the weather itself seemed to conspire against them, blizzards whipping through the valley with unnatural ferocity. Yet despite these advantages, Luke and Miriam knew they couldn't hold out indefinitely. Reinforcements continued to arrive, their numbers overwhelming. Still, they fought on, driven by a shared belief that giving up was not an option, not when so much hung in the balance. As the battle raged, Luke found himself reflecting on how drastically his life had changed since arriving on Cryos. What had begun as a routine research mission had spiraled into something far greater, a fight for justice, for coexistence, for love. He glanced at Miriam, her form glowing faintly amidst the chaos, and felt a surge of gratitude. Gratitude for having met her, for being given the chance to stand beside someone so extraordinary. But alongside that gratitude came doubt. Could they truly win? Or were they merely delaying the inevitable? These questions haunted him as he fired off warning shots, keeping the advancing forces at bay. Miriam, sensing his turmoil, turned to him briefly. "Don't lose faith," she urged, her voice cutting through the din of conflict. "Not yet." Her words steadied him, reminding him why they were fighting in the first place. This wasn't just about protecting her, it was about proving that humanity could change, that compassion and understanding could triumph over greed and exploitation. Their defiance inspired others, too. Some members of the crew stationed on Cryos, who had initially dismissed Miriam as a myth or a resource to be harvested, began questioning their own roles in the mission. Dr. Vasquez, in particular, emerged as an unexpected ally, using her knowledge of biology to sabotage key pieces of equipment and hinder the extraction efforts. "We're scientists," she argued passionately during a tense standoff with Lieutenant Harris. "Not conquerors." Her rebellion sparked a chain reaction, causing fractures within the ranks of those sent to capture Miriam. While many remained loyal to their orders, others began hesitating, unsure of whether the ends justified the means. This internal discord gave Luke and Miriam a critical advantage. With fewer adversaries actively pursuing them, they managed to hold their ground longer than expected. Still, the tide of battle remained unpredictable, swinging back and forth like the pendulum of fate. One particularly harrowing moment occurred when a group of soldiers breached their outer defenses, forcing Luke and Miriam to retreat deeper into the valley. Cornered against a sheer ice wall, they prepared for what might be their final stand. "Thank you," Miriam whispered suddenly, her voice trembling with emotion. "For what?" Luke asked, confused. "For believing in me. For staying." Before he could respond, she raised her hands, summoning a surge of energy that rippled outward in a dazzling display of light. The soldiers froze, momentarily blinded, giving Luke and Miriam enough time to slip away once more. Exhausted but resolute, Luke and Miriam pressed onward, seeking refuge in the heart of Cryo's most treacherous terrain. Here, glaciers loomed like titanic sentinels, their surfaces jagged and unstable. Avalanches roared periodically, burying entire sections of the landscape beneath cascading walls of ice. It was a deadly environment, but also one that offered unparalleled concealment. As they navigated the precarious pathways, Miriam shared stories of her ancestors who had once thrived in this very region. She spoke of their ingenuity, their ability to adapt to even the harshest conditions. Listening to her, Luke couldn't help but draw parallels between her people and humanity. Both species possessed remarkable potential, but whereas her people had chosen harmony, humanity often leaned toward domination. "What do you think went wrong?" he asked eventually, voicing a question that had plagued him for days. Miriam considered this carefully before responding. "Fear," she said finally. "Fear of scarcity. Fear of weakness. Fear of losing control." Her answer resonated deeply with Luke, encapsulating the root of so many conflicts throughout history. Humanity's insatiable hunger for power stemmed not from malice, but from insecurity, a desire to protect oneself at all costs, even if it meant harming others. "But it doesn't have to be that way," Miriam added gently. "You've shown me that." Her faith in him was both humbling and empowering. If she could believe in humanity's capacity for change, then perhaps there was still hope after all. Their journey through the glacial expanse culminated in the discovery of an ancient temple carved directly into the side of a mountain. Its entrance was marked by intricate carvings depicting scenes of unity and cooperation, echoing the themes Miriam had described earlier. Inside, the air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of minerals and age-old wisdom. "This is where my people sought guidance during times of crisis," Miriam explained, her voice tinged with reverence. "Maybe it can offer us answers, too." Together, they explored the temple's labyrinthine corridors, uncovering artifacts imbued with residual energy. One such artifact, a crystalline orb suspended in midair, reacted visibly to their presence, glowing brighter with each step closer. When Miriam touched it, visions flooded her mind, glimpses of possible futures, some hopeful, others bleak. She withdrew her hand abruptly, visibly shaken. "What did you see?" Luke asked, concern etched across his features. "A choice," she replied cryptically. "One that will determine the fate of both our worlds." The vision left Miriam contemplative, her thoughts turning inward as they returned to the surface. Though she didn't elaborate on the specifics of what she had seen, Luke sensed the gravity of the decision ahead. Whatever path they chose, it would come with consequences, some immediate, others far-reaching. Meanwhile, the conflict outside showed no signs of abating. Reports indicated that reinforcements were en route, bringing with them even more advanced weaponry and technology. Time was running out, and the stakes had never been higher. Determined to make one last appeal to reason, Luke used the communication array hidden within the temple to broadcast a global message. This time, he focused not on Earth's leaders, but on its citizens, the ordinary people whose voices often went unheard amidst the clamor of politics and profit. "To the people of Earth," he began, his tone earnest and heartfelt. "I speak to you not as a soldier or a scientist, but as someone who has witnessed firsthand the beauty and fragility of life beyond our planet. We stand at a crossroads, a moment where we must decide what kind of future we want to build. Will we continue down a path of exploitation and destruction? Or will we choose compassion, understanding, and coexistence?" He paused, glancing at Miriam, before continuing. "The choice is ours. Let your voices be heard. Demand accountability. Stand up for what's right." The response was overwhelming. Social media platforms lit up with hashtags supporting #SaveCryos and #ProtectMiriam. Petitions calling for an end to the military operation garnered millions of signatures overnight. Protests erupted worldwide, drawing attention not only to cryos but also to the broader issues of environmental degradation and ethical responsibility. Encouraged by this groundswell of support, Luke and Miriam redoubled their efforts, using the temple as a base of operations to coordinate countermeasures. With the help of Dr. Vasquez and other sympathetic crew members, they devised strategies to neutralize incoming threats without resorting to violence. It was a delicate balancing act, requiring patience, precision, and an unwavering commitment to their cause. Yet gradually, progress became evident. Ships intended for deployment were grounded due to public outcry. Key figures within the military hierarchy faced scrutiny and calls for resignation. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. In the end, it wasn't brute force or superior firepower that secured victory, it was unity. The combined efforts of activists, scientists, and ordinary citizens forced those in power to reconsider their priorities. Negotiations commenced, leading to a landmark agreement recognizing Cryos as a protected sanctuary under interplanetary law. Any attempts to exploit its resources for military gain were deemed illegal, punishable by severe sanctions. For Luke and Miriam, the resolution brought a mix of relief and bittersweet reflection. Their ordeal had tested them in ways neither could have imagined, forging a bond stronger than any material force. Yet it had also underscored the fragility of peace and the ever-present risk of regression. As they stood together overlooking the newly restored landscape, Luke wrapped an arm around Miriam, pulling her close. "We did it," he murmured, awe evident in his voice. "Yes," she agreed, leaning into his embrace. "But the work isn't over." "Not yet." Indeed, challenges remained. Colonies established on neighboring planets adopted eco-friendly practices, prioritizing preservation over exploitation. Miriam became a beacon of hope, her story transcending borders and species alike. Generations learned to cherish the interconnectedness of all living things, guided by the wisdom of a girl made of stars and ice. And though the universe remained vast and unpredictable, Luke and Miriam faced it side by side, bound by love and purpose. Theirs was a tale of redemption, reminding humanity that even in the darkest corners of space, light could prevail, if only given a chance. If you enjoyed this epic sci-fi romance, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more captivating stories from beyond the stars.